This is an oral history interview of Mr. Al Huang at his office in Houston, Texas on May 6, 2013. Interview conducted by Quỳnh Lê for the Houston Asian American Archives at Rice University's Woodson Research Center. So thank you for having us today. Why don't you start the interview by telling us, introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about when and where you grew up.
Thank you, Quỳnh. And first of all, it is an honor for me to be interviewed by you. As an Asian, I would like to contribute my part to the growth of the Asian community here. So it is an honor, and thank you. Well, I am the sixth child of my family. We have a large family. I have 9 siblings, including me will be 10. And I was born on May the 1962 in Phan Rang, Vietnam. In 1975, after the fall of Saigon, we migrated to the United States.
Yes, and can you describe a little bit about the hometown where you grew up?
Well, my father and my mother migrated from Nghệ An in 1954. And at that time, Vietnam was divided in 2 countries. One is North Vietnam under the communist regime, and one is South Vietnam under what we call the Republic regime. So my father and my mother migrated down to the south, and they were young. They did not have any child at that time. They came to South Vietnam and they had 10 children, including me. So I was born in Phan Rang, but my father, he was in the army. So we moved to Ba Ma Thuột in 1966 because he had to post in Ba Ma Thuột. Ba Ma Thuột was at that time was only a small city, about I believe 50,000 folks the most. And I live in what we call, in Vietnam, they call nhà quê. It's like a peasant.
The countryside.
Yeah, the countryside, the peasant side. So it was kind of boring. But I was so young. Most of the time I was in school. That's what it is.
Yes, and you mentioned your father worked. Your father was in the army.
Yes, my father was in the army from 1960 something up until 1975. He was in the South Vietnam Army, and in 1975 in March, North Vietnam controlled. Actually, they took control of Ba Ma Thuột sometime March the 10th or March the 11th. At that time, I was already about 12 something, and I already joined what we call a junior seminary. And so I left my family in 1974 when I was only about 11 something or 12. I joined the junior seminary. My family already left the city, and then after after North Vietnam took control of the city, then I left the city and caught up with my family. We then went through the jungle and mountains and escaped ourselves down to Nha Trang and then by boat to Saigon. So we came to Saigon about April or something, 14 or something like that. But eventually North Vietnam troops came to Saigon. So we left Saigon the last day, April the 30th. On the last Navy Republic of South Vietnam Navy ship HO8, they call it Chi Lăng 2.
Yes.
So we left on the last boat, and that ship, 2 of the engines died, didn't work. So the ship went zigzag from Saigon to Subic Bay for about almost 10 days, and then we were not rescued, but we came to Subic Bay. We were picked up by a U.S. Navy ship.
How do you spell that? I'm sorry.
Subic Bay, Subic. Subic Bay of Philippines.
Yes.
Okay. Then we were picked up by the U.S. Navy ship, they took us to Guam, Guam, and then from Guam we flew to Hawaii. Then from Hawaii we flew to Pennsylvania, and we stayed in the what we call the refugee camps, Indian Tau Gap, up until November the 6th. I remember that day. We left Indian Tau Gap. We were sponsored by a Catholic church, parish in Reading, Reading. They spell reading, but they pronounce it Reading. So we were sponsored by a Catholic church in Reading, Pennsylvania, and we settled ourselves in Reading, Pennsylvania first.
Yes. And you settled in Reading that was still 1975?
Yes.
Okay. So what did your parents do in Reading?
My father became a janitor for a hospital in Reading, Pennsylvania. At that time, his salary was $1.90 an hour. And at that time, a Coke cost only only a nickel, 5 cents. A U.S. postage stamp for the first class was only 4 cents. So his salary was $1.90 at that time.
Yes. And what about your mother?
My mother was only a housewife. She took care of us. Eight of us at that time.
Yes. So can you describe a little bit about the area that your family settled in Reading?
We settled in an area that is 100% white and no black. So I experienced discrimination for sure. In my school, I was the only Asian in the school, and I was kind of to the American girls, I was kind of cute. So they volunteered to teach me English during lunchtime. Usually the sisters assign one or two of them to coach me on my pronunciation. That is also a problem because the boys, they don't like it. So they usually, in the restroom, they jumped on me. 10 of them, 20 of them, they jumped and beat me up in the restroom. I could not stand it anymore. So one day, I believe it was sometime in 1976, I don't remember the exact date. But at that time, I got mad. I used what we call the Vietnamese Kung Fu, the Vo Vietnam, and in the football field. I jumped up and I knocked down the bulliest, the toughest guy in school. I remember I broke one or two of his teeth, I'm sure of that, And the principal was mad. She called me up, line up in front of everybody in the school, and she said to me, "You want to kung fu? I want to kung fu you. You think you know how to kung fu? I will kung fu you." Anyway, she reprimanded me and scolded me. My sister was in the school too. She said this, "I brought shame to the family, dishonor to the family." So she came back and she told my father that I knocked down the guy in the school, and I became a shame to the whole family. My father at that night beat me up with the broomsticks. I believe it broke one or two of the broomsticks. And I said, "Well, Father, you don't know me. You don't know them. So, that's the real life reality. Okay, that's it." I didn't cry. So that's how I experienced life in Reading, Pennsylvania.
Yes. And how long did your family stay in Reading?
After 2 winters, 1975, 1976, my father decided to move to New Orleans. They wanted to go to the South because I remember it was very cold. But I left the family in 1977 during the summer to join a Vietnamese congregation, a Catholic congregation in Carthage, Missouri. So I left there in 1977. I went to Carthage, Missouri to join a Catholic congregation. My father moved to New Orleans early in 1978. And then I think he went over here, or in Houston, to find a business. He opened the first business, one of the first business, what we call the billiard game. The billiard game.
Yes.
Yes, the pool game. Pool. It was sometime in late 1978. He came to Houston, and he leased a building about 12 or 15,000 square feet, and that building is on San Jacinto, and now it's the first bank. So it was in 1978 he leased and had his first business at that location.
Wonderful. And may I ask if he's told you anything about what the working environment was like for Vietnamese people in '79?
Up in Reading, Pennsylvania, like him, he did not speak any English, so the best for him is as a janitor or something like dishwashing or something like that. But he was a janitor in a hospital for up until 1978 when he left, and I didn't hear any complaint. He said, it was boring. But did they pick on him? Actually, at that time, I was too young for him to tell me what happened. But it seems that he wasn't very happy with his job. That was one of the reasons why he moved down to the South to find his own work, to be self-employed.
Yes. And so I believe that your family was in Louisiana for a very, very short period of time.
Yes.
And then they moved on to Houston.
Yes.
What was the working environment like in Houston? Did he tell you?
Well, he opened the pool game for Vietnamese. At that time, Houston already had a couple of, I think, 20 or 30,000 Vietnamese already. So he opened a pool game business. So he was self-employed and he was happy. If you be self-employed, usually you don't have that kind of pressure. And he was very successful. It was a successful business for him.
Yeah. And were there any challenges he had to face economically or socially?
Well, at that time, after he opened the pool game and people saw that he was successful, they also opened another, what we call competition. Business competition, for sure, yes. But in the Vietnamese community, their clients, their customers were Vietnamese, 100%.
Yeah. Did he face any discrimination?
No, in the Vietnamese community, how can he face discrimination? He faced tough competition, but no discrimination.
Now, what about the non-Vietnamese community?
I cannot speak for them. You asked me what happened, yeah. But for sure, at that time it was. Here we have what we call the KKK at that time, the 3Ks, the Ku Klux Klan, and they, discrimination against the Asian for sure. And also we have a lot of gangsters here too.
Yes. I believe that would have been very dangerous.
It was a very dangerous, tough time at that time.
Yes. But that time you were still in Missouri, correct?
At that time, usually I have what we call 3-month vacations. So I go to Houston, I go to Nevada or to Atlanta, on the summer. I went to one of the summer, I believe in 1980 actually, 1980 for sure. At that time, I'd already just graduated from high school. So I went to Nevada and for 3 months, and I worked as a maid in a motel for 3 months to financially support myself.
And where in Nevada was this?
Las Vegas.
Yes. And what was the working salary that you?
Yeah, they paid me by the room. Actually, each room it was like $1.25 or $1.50. I don't remember at that time, but it was quite good for me. I made good money because I was quick. I cleaned the room very fast. You know, I was young and energetic, so I believe my salary at least $200 or $300 a week for that time. And at that time, $200 or $300 a week is pretty good already. Yes. So I make good money to support myself. I think I got a couple of $1,000 after 3 months so that I can go to school.
Yes, and that was to fund yourself for college.
Yes.
Which college did you go to?
I didn't go to college immediately. I went back actually to the congregation.
Yes.
And became what we call a religious brother for 5 years. At that time, I didn't attend not 5 years, 3 years. And then in 1983, I came down to U of H. I came down here in Houston to study philosophy and settled down myself here. So in 1983, I still was a member of the congregation, but studying philosophy here. But I left the congregation in 1985.
And that was a Vietnamese congregation?
That was a Vietnamese congregation.
Was there a big Vietnamese community in Missouri, or the place that you stayed in Missouri?
No. It was only a Vietnamese congregation settled in Carthage, Missouri. We had about, 100. But Carthage, Missouri, they don't have any Vietnamese. Okay. So I came here in 1983 and I studied philosophy and languages. I got my degree in 1989 and then I came back to Vietnam, and Vietnam imprisoned me a year, 16 months, solitary confinement, because I was trying to overthrow Vietnam government. They released me and I came back here in 1983 and I had my Juris Doctor degree in 1996. I practiced law in 1997.
Yes. So, may I ask why you went back to Vietnam?
Because at that time, Vietnam was very poor. There was no human rights in Vietnam at that time. So I want to overthrow the government to have freedom and democracy for Vietnam. But it wasn't it wasn't easy. It was tough.
Yes. Can you please elaborate more on that, the whole process of?
Well, I left the congregation. I studied philosophy. I joined one of the Vietnamese organizations over here, working to overthrow the Vietnamese communist regime over in Vietnam. I joined the organization. I remember the date, January the 15th, 1986. I was very young. I joined the organization to be trained to work against Vietnam. So I came back to Vietnam 3 trips. The 3rd trip I was arrested, trying to recruit people. That's what it was. And I was discovered and by the what we call the Securitats of Vietnam. So they took me and they imprisoned me for 60 months in solitary confinement because of the organizations. You know, in Vietnam, up until today, there is only one party. Only one party, that is the Communist Party. But here in the States, we have 2 parties, at least multi-parties. So I was working for what we call the multi-party system. And I was imprisoned by the Vietnamese communist regime because at this point, the Constitution of Vietnam still asserts that the country is ruled by one party only. That is the Communist Party.
Yes. And then what year did you? What year were you imprisoned, and what year were you released?
I was imprisoned in March 1992, and I was released out on July 1993.
Yes. And before you went back to Vietnam, did you hold any other jobs in Houston?
Yes, I when after my graduation, well, before my graduation actually, I already had a liquor store. I worked in grocery stores and also liquor stores. And the liquor store I owned it. I purchased the liquor store from Spanx, and I made a lot of money on that too. So.
Yes. And so, can you describe your experience working, for example, at the grocery store, at the liquor store? Were there any, like, how supportive was the local people around
The
there?
local people, the majority are very nice, but the African Americans, they do not like us a lot because they think that we steal their jobs. But actually, we create jobs, our jobs. We create jobs for us and do it, and we make a living. We make a living out of ourselves very decently. We work hard. We worked I worked 16 hours a day. But the local, especially not the white folks. The white folks, they can see that, but the African American, they were not. I see some of them. They were not very happy with the improving conditions, financially improving condition by us. They think that, well, we came back here so when I was just recently came for what 5-10 years. How could we, be? They call us so rich, but actually we weren't that rich. We just create our own jobs, and that's it. And we work like what, twice, 3 times as much as they do. We work 16 hours a day, sometimes 7 days a week, and that's why we got the surplus. That's how we got the surplus, and they were jealous of that, in a way.
Yes, and so I believe you faced a certain degree of discrimination from that community.
Yes.
In what way was it?
Well, you can see they use slang all the time, and then you have heard on the news a lot. The Asian, especially the Vietnamese cashier, was shot by African Americans. Many of them.
Yes.
I had a liquor store on Alameda, Genoa. At that time, we got the bulletproof everything. So, but because of the bulletproof, I wasn't harmed, but my business was so successful. I made a lot of money on that. I had to open the liquor store from 10 to 9, Monday to Saturday, so 6 days a week, 11 hours a day, 66 hours. That is as a cashier, but I also have to clean up or prepare myself, an hour after or an hour before. So actually, we work like almost 80 hours a week, twice, 2 full-time jobs already.
Yes. And so, which area did you and your family stay in Houston?
My father had his first business in downtown, as I said, in now. In San Jacinto and I believe is Bell or Capital, something like that. Now it's the First Bank. And my business was also in the African American community. It was on Alameda, Genoa. So Alameda, not Alameda Road. That is Alameda in Southmore.
Yes.
So it's also in like Midtown.
So more the museum district now.
Yes, museum district now.
Yes.
African American, most of them.
And where did your family live?
My family, my father lived up in Cavalcade, so that would be District H now, so that would be North Main, Cavalcade, somewhere. Yeah.
Yes. And were there a lot of Vietnamese American people around that community where your father settled?
No, we lived mostly in the Hispanic community.
So at that time there were.
But we go to work in downtown. So.
But at that time, the Vietnamese community was more concentrated in the Bel Air area.
No, the Vietnamese community was at that time concentrated on Milam and Travis now. So we have the Vietnamese community concentrate in Midtown now. And the Vietnamese community and also the Chinese community moved to Bel Air, let me see, approximately in 1998.
Yes.
So.
Great. So after you were released in 93, yes? After you were released in 93, you came back to Houston. What did you do afterwards?
I studied and got my Juris Doctor degree and passed the bar exam and practiced law in 1997.
Yes.
And I opened my office in also in Midtown. At that time, actually, the Vietnamese still are concentrated in downtown. So I had my office on Travis Street.
Yes. And please tell me a little bit more about the experience of opening a law firm especially around the Vietnamese
I was
community.
very successful because at that time the majority of my clients, 98%, were Vietnamese. And I was one of the first Vietnamese attorneys here in Houston. So almost everybody came to me. So I had a good time. And then I joined what we call the Asian Chamber of Commerce. I went back to Vietnam again, sneak in 2001. But I abandoned the idea of using violent force against the regime. So I came back here and I said, well, you know what, the best way is trying to go into mainstream. So in 2007, I became the president of the Vietnamese community here. In 2009, I was elected as a council member of the city of Houston. When becoming as the council member of the city of Houston, time consumption is so huge. I reduced my law practice almost 90 or 95%. Well, actually, becoming as the president of the Vietnamese community is already reduced a lot of my practice. I don't have enough time.
But did you still keep your office
I still
open?
have my office right now, 801 Congress, not very far from here.
And you delegated your work to
to assistants.
other members?
Yes.
Yes. And how did you feel about the working conditions of the Vietnamese Americans around the time from the 80s to the 90s? How did you feel they transitioned?
Well, the transition is, first of all, yes, we experienced some discrimination, especially with the KKKs. At that time, it was still very strong here. And I have worked with many other Vietnamese fishermen. They complained of not only the discrimination, but targets of. They were the targets for the KKK to eliminate them. So I don't remember. They were killing some murders before, but there were, and our community filed a lawsuit against them. So the judge already settled that, and the KKK could not do anything. So right now you can see that we improved ourselves a lot. Fishermen, the Vietnamese fishermen in the Gulf area, they are improving their working condition. And also us here. So I think that we initially we began also, like, suppose the discrimination is 100%. Now it's going to be like about 20 or 30% of that. It reduced tremendously, yes.
Yes. Regarding employment, what did the Vietnamese American community usually take up as employment?
Well, I see that the first wave of Vietnamese who came here, we worked as in what we call the low class, such as janitors, dishwashers, and things like that. And then some of them, like my father, they want to improve themselves. They opened their own business. You can see that my father had a pool game business. And many of them on Milam's and Travis, they opened restaurants. And they are successful in that. So they become what we call self-employed in their own business. The second generations, they are different. They become lawyers, doctors. Second and third generations are lawyers, doctors. They are in almost every field. Engineers in NASA. What Vietnamese in NASA? They have major roles in NASA now. So I think individually, the Vietnamese community, the people in the Vietnamese community here is not like not capitalized. I mean, individually, they are very successful in almost every field. You can see that many Vietnamese are lawyers now. Bunch of them are doctors. Especially, I see in medical fields, many of them surgeons, pediatricians, dentists. All of them are optometrists. So Vietnamese are very successful on those things. I think they are successful in almost every field, even in business.
Yes. I'd like to ask about the wave of Vietnamese that worked as fishermen a lot.
The first wave was in 1975. They experienced a lot of discrimination. They don't speak English up until today. That first wave, 1975 up until today, they still have their own shrimp boats, but they do not speak English that well. That first wave, then you see the Vietnamese have a couple of waves coming here. The first wave in 1975. 1975, the Vietnamese came here about 10 to 20, so maximum 30,000. Okay, and then the second wave is what we call the boat people. Boat people fled from Vietnam to refugees camp in Thailand, in Indonesia, and stuff like that. And then they was accepted as refugee, and they came here. That wave was from 1980 to 1988, a decade. That wave is a lot. There's a lot. That came to this. They came to the city of Houston and the vicinities a lot. That wave, they still do they participate with the first wave to do some jobs like fishermen and all the things, grocery business. That's the second wave. But the third wave is different. The third wave is sponsored. They came here directly from Vietnam, such as what we call the HO program, the Humanitarian Orderly Departure, something like that. And they came here. That's the third wave. From 1990 to 1998. And then after that, we got what we call the fourth wave. The fourth wave is the wave of people depart from Vietnam officially as students. They have visas to come in here as students, businessmen. So they came here, and then the students, they are going to do they study, they are successful businessmen, they buy property here. So they are very successful. But now, the first wave and the second wave, they have what we call the second generation and third generation. So added up now, Vietnamese community here is quite complex because what we call, this is a melting pot now. So the first wave, second wave, and the third wave, the majority of them are anti-communist. Okay, they don't like the government over there. They just want to overthrow Vietnam. And that wave, including their, the second generation and third generation, to some, third maybe not, but the second generation, still are very, the animosity against Vietnam's government is very high. But the fourth wave is not. The fourth wave, they say, well, we're different. We're students, we're businessmen. We can, orally we depart from Vietnam. We see things different. And so now there is what we call almost like a conflict points of views in the community, trying to see what can we do, what can we resolve. We can be here as friends, and can we help Vietnam, something like that. So you will see that each wave, the approach of business is different. the first wave and second wave, they don't want to do anything with Vietnam. They just want to concentrate and get their success here and invest their money here. The third and the fourth wave, the third wave a little bit, but the fourth wave is that they want to have what we call bilateral trade.
Yes.
And they want to diversify their portfolio and investment. So I think that the trend in the future is the second generation and the third generation will join up with the fourth wave to see things different. And you can see that I also, second generation, I was one of the most extremist of the second generation. But when we elected and also working with all the communities, Asian communities, especially with the Chinese community and all the Asian communities, I see things different. The best way to protect and to build a community is to be mingled, to be part of what we call Asian as a whole. Do not separate yourself out as only Vietnamese. If you separate yourself out only Vietnamese, you are not going to be that successful.
Yeah.
That's to me.
So I believe the conflicts that you mentioned earlier between the generations, that partially arises from the business choices, political choices that they've made based on the amount of knowledge or exposure they've had to certain cultures.
The Vietnamese community here is controlled by political points of view more than anything. So you could see that they do business, they still have to be, they have to face the reality that political activists who do not like the communist regime will attack them too. So not only they attack politicians and activists who do not go with the same line as they do, they also attack anybody, even businessmen, lawyers, professionals, who what they call sympathizers to the communist regimes. Actually, they love their patriots, but they don't see things different like all the folks do, like me. So you asking me on the business point of view? People like to do business, but they are so scared and afraid of the attack by the political activists.
Yes. And how far back do you think this trend has been going on?
This trend?
Political activists.
This trend has been here, established here since 1975.
Yes.
But eventually it will fade out, especially folks like me who stand up and say, well, we have to divert ourselves from the controlling political activists, because I see things different. I see things, ways that I believe that we have to coordinate and partnerships are going to be better. I don't see dependence only. I see interdependence.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So I'd like to continue on to more personal questions regarding your own experience. You said you went to university and majored in philosophy.
Yes.
Why was that? Why did you choose that major?
Because at that time I was still in the congregation. I was studying philosophy to be a priest. Mm. And then after philosophy, what can you do with philosophy? You have to go to be a lawyer. That's it.
Yes, and that was the choice.
No choice. I don't see any choice.
Yes. And you said you worked briefly at a grocery store at one point.
Yeah, I worked in grocery stores, owned by family owned.
Oh. Okay. So that was your family business.
Yes.
Yes.
And my business too. I opened my own business later on as a liquor store.
Yes. Can you describe the family business, that grocery store a little bit? How it operated and... Like
every store here, you can see. Well, but I said to you that we operate like almost, as a grocery store, that's crazy. You have to open the grocery at 7 o'clock. You close at 11, almost 7 to 11. So the whole family has to take turn. So going to school and then attending classes, then come back, and then be an assistant. But I don't work that much at that time actually. Then when I went to college, I became what we call a private tutor. I tutor students in the memorial area, teaching them French and math and stuff like that. So I did a pretty good job in tutoring. My salary was good, $30 an hour at that time.
Wow.
So,
and what year did your family grocery store open? Do you remember?
my family had the grocery stores. I think it was in 1983.
Yes.
And then later on, when I shifted to, I was the one who borrowed the money from my dad and my mom and purchased the liquor store. I was the first person who was in the liquor store in my family, and then the trade, and then my family, I think they shift from grocery store to liquor store now, all of them, and they are still in the liquor store now.
Yes.
Not me. I'm not in the liquor store anymore. But my family, my siblings are in the liquor store.
Yeah. And so your family opened the grocery store in about '83, and so how long did they continue to do that?
Up until 1980 something, 1990 something, I don't remember. But when I purchased the liquor store, they saw that I did it. I was successful in the business. I don't have that many headache like they do in the grocery business. Mm-hmm. So they shift from the grocery business to the liquor business.
So about 10 years. They had that for about 10 years.
Yes.
And what merchandise did they focus on? What product?
Grocery stores, you have on almost everything.
Was it focused
Milk.
more on Asian foods or?
No, because we were in the Hispanic and also the African community, so we have to focus on. First, mostly at that time, people make money on beer and cigarettes and milk and orange juice. So those are the things that they concentrate on. Beer, not wine, because wine has to be in the liquor business. Okay.
Yeah.
Beer, cigarettes, candies. Those are the things.
Yes. And were there a lot of supermarkets or grocery stores run by Vietnamese Americans around that time?
Vietnamese runs groceries business at that time the most. But and then later on you will see big supermarket like Hong Kong City Mall and things like that eventually grow up.
Yes. So it was almost like the predecessor of those supermarkets.
Yes.
Yes. And then your family moved on to the liquor store business, and how did that go?
Because it was me. I saw grocery business was so it was so time consumption, and I had a lot of headache, especially with spoiled products, decayed products. And I said, well, liquor business. The more you're in the liquor business, you will like it because there is no decay product. The liquor is there, and the price will eventually go up and up almost every year. So the inventory, if you leave it there, the longer the better. You don't have to worry anything. The time you don't have to spend like 7 to 11, you only have to spend from 10 to 9. You have Sundays and holidays off, so that's when I decided to do that.
And your family followed suit and still remained in that stream of business until this day?
Yes, till this day.
And do you know which locations they've opened their stores in?
Yes. My sister had one still have one in Kingwood. My other sister have one in Pearland. My brother has one in South 45.
Yes. So what other jobs did you hold in between the liquor store and moving on to your law practice?
Well, I studied most of my wife, actually, when I get married. Before that, I was in I had what we call a substation for dry cleaning and for alteration. So my wife now is a tailor. She has 2 of her tailor shops, so she runs the tailor shops more than I do. I do not know anything about that. So.
And what was the average income or salary from those types of jobs?
She does a good job. A lot of money. And I also was in the real estate business. Well, I did many things. So I was in the real estate business. I was when I went to college, actually U of H, I had my real estate license. It was years ago, but I didn't practice. You know why? Because later on, as an attorney at law, usually I could be a broker, but I don't practice that. So, but I developed my own land. I make a profit on that at one time, and then I stopped when I ran for the as the president of the Vietnamese community in the city council. Actually, I stopped almost everything. I don't have enough time.
Yes. Why did you decide to go into the real estate in the first place?
It was before the crash. Real estate here was quite good, and then I made money on that, investing in the real estate. But the crash now is so long, and it's delaying, so that's what it is. But also it's this because for how many years? About 2007 up until 6-7 years as a public servant, so I don't have enough time for that. So I just go ahead and hold it later on.
Yes. So when did you decide that you would like to go into like the political mainstream with your elections?
I decided for a long time, but the question is that can I win? And I won in 2009.
2009. And the position for the president of the Vietnamese community?
That was in 2007.
2007. And how did that process of election go? The election in 2007 first.
Well, Vietnamese, they have their own election. They have their own ballots. They elect, and I think I won. At that time, I had about 4,000 something, almost 5,000 votes for me.
So how many percent was that?
Well, they call the Vietnamese here is almost over 100,000, but voting here is not like in many countries. The turnout, if it is 10%, that would be good. 5 to 10%. So.
Right. And how did you?
Well, when you have, it's more than 5%, 10%, because it has to be over the age of 18, right? Yeah.
So why did you decide to run for that position specifically?
They asked me. People just came to my office and said, well, we need your help. Because those positions, you don't have salaries, right?
Yes.
Many positions, you be there just as for the name, for serving the community, that's it.
Yes, and how has your interaction with the Vietnamese American community changed since then?
Well, the Vietnamese, you are Vietnamese and you want to contribute, but it's a very, very, very tired, time consumption job. People are very demanding. It's a contribution back. That's what it is.
What type of issues did people usually bring up for you?
Vietnamese communists, that all the time. We have human rights violations and those are the things most concerned by the Vietnamese. They don't care any other thing. You can do anything better than that. You think you as a leader, as a second generation leader, I see things perspectively. I see things differently, such as approaching what we call the strength of the community economically, financially, also socially. But the Vietnamese community know that everything they approach is politics, political points of view. But the political points of view here, it doesn't mean that the mainstream political points of view is only we want to overthrow the Vietnamese communists. Anybody, anything is that's the only you can see that the theme is like 98% on that theme.
But have you seen that percentage shrink a
Constant,
little bit?
no. Up until today, it's the same thing. Constantly, you have a group, a small group. If you say small, but that group is very controlling. And if you step out of that, then they label you as a communist sympathizer, a communist agent, and they jumped on you. They turn the hatred on the communists. It turns on you. So that's what it is. So working with the Vietnamese community on that issue is very, very tough and tiresome.
Yes. And do you continue to hold that position as president?
No. After becoming as the council member, I had to vacate myself. So I had to resign.
Yes. Well, do you see?
And as a city council member, I do my job as a city council member, working not only for one community, not only for the Vietnamese community, but as the interest of everybody, the best interest of the city of Houston. I had a lot of successes here for the city of Houston, but because I said that we have to have open dialogue with the Vietnamese Communist government, I've been jumped by them and labeled by them as a traitor and things like that.
So a lot of backlash.
Yeah, but I do my job. I don't mind about it. It's time to have open dialogue. That's it. Nothing else. Nothing you can do. They just want to overthrow the communist government over there. You know, that's their perspective. You cannot. You don't have anything. That's what to me. And even talking to any communist member or even to the consul general over here, then they'll want to jump on you. It's as a city council member, hey, I can talk to any consul general, but no Vietnamese communist consul general. See?
Yes, that's quite an extremist point of view.
Yes, it is.
But have you seen any small changes with the younger generation?
Yes, definitely.
Yes.
Definitely.
But the older generation still stand their ground.
Yes.
Yes. And
it's my job. I think it's my job to change the younger generation. I'm not that young, but I'm not that old.
In between.
I'm on the stepping stone for the younger generation so that they can see things differently. They have to, the old way, they love their country, they are patriots, yes, but they cannot resolve the issues. There are, you have tons of ways to skin a cat. And I believe that they have to change. To resolve the issues, it's not only by that. To resolve the issues, there are other ways. And I believe that I do my job as a stepping stones for the younger generation. And if I do not have that courage to stand up, who can? Because right now, I'm the only Asian council member here. So I have to stand up for the younger generation.
Yes. Can you tell us a bit about your experience with your election in 2009 for the position of city council member?
Sure. It was 7 candidates. I was, let me see. At that time, what we call I was an underdog. The one who really had the upper chance at that time was Mr. Mike Laster. Now he's also a council member.
Yes.
Okay. So here, Mike Laster is an attorney, a Caucasian. They think that he was the one who should be the council member, not me. The second person was Mr. Joe Chow, a Chinese-Taiwanese businessman who've been here for 1960 something. The third person is Mr. something I forgot, but Also, the last name I think is Khan, not MJ Khan for sure. He is a Pakistani businessman. So we got 3 Asians, see? 3 Asians in the same race. Then we have Mr. Lewis Cook, African American attorney. So that's the 5th person. The 6th person is Mr. Peter. I forgot, but also I believe he's also an attorney. And then the 7th person was Mr. Robert King, a Caucasian, but I don't know his background for sure. So we had 7 people, 3 Asians. How many attorneys? 1, 2, 3, about 3 or 4 attorneys at least.
Yeah.
So you got 1 black. You count by ethnic by 1 African American, 3 Asians, and 3 Caucasians. So the race was tough. People at that time think that Mr. Mike Lester will win, but actually he came out to be the first one. I was the second one. So we had a runoff, and I won on the runoff. So it was a very tough race. It wasn't that easy. And now, at that time, District F had about 210,000. Now we still have the same size, about the same size population.
Yes. And how did you decide to run for that position of city council member?
Anybody can run for. As a citizen, if you are as a resident of the city of Houston and you're a U.S. citizen, you can apply and run.
And what was your personal reasoning to run for that position?
This is mainstream. You want the Asian to have a voice. This is what it is.
Yes. And during the election process, was there a lot of support from the Vietnamese American community?
I got a lot of support from the Vietnamese community. Because at that time I was the president of the Vietnamese community.
Yes, but some became quite hostile once you started mentioning bilateral talks.
Yes. The second election still had a lot of support, but some of them became very hostile against me. Now my 3rd election is coming up. And after the trip to Vietnam, I believe I got some more who are going to be very hostile against me. But talking to folks who, the people, just the normal people, they support me because they think I do the right thing. Sometimes you do. To serve the constituents, you cannot say that I serve everybody, because not everybody is going to agree with you. So you just serve what we call the majority, right? I think the majority, first of all, now as a city council member, I do not only represent the Vietnamese community, I represent my district. My district, I have Chinese, Korean, Japanese, all Asians as a whole, African American, Hispanic, Caucasian. So I have to balance it out. If I was the president of the Vietnamese community, I serve the Vietnamese community. I just consider only the Vietnamese interest. But once as a city council member, I have to balance out the Vietnamese interest with all the community interest.
Yes. But do the Vietnamese community still have a very loud voice in asking you to focus more on Vietnamese issues?
They ask to focus on the Vietnamese issues, but the interest of the city of Houston is to open up for bilateral trade, not only with Vietnam but every country, right? Mm-hmm. You know that. So we have to approach what we call a moderate approach, not extremist approach.
So I'd like to move on to asking about your family life. does your family, when you first moved here, does your family still preserve your Vietnamese traditions?
We do all the time.
Yes.
We do all the time, and
So
even
you and your parents and your siblings.
yes, and even now, and even my children now, I teach them to abide by the Vietnamese traditions and values.
Can you elaborate for our listeners?
Tết, festivals, things like that. Then speaking Vietnamese at home, making sure that they learn Vietnamese. Those are the things that we want to, making sure that they know Vietnamese first.
Yes. Great, wonderful. Is there anything you'd like to add to the interview?
Well, I wish you a lot of success on your research.
All right. Thank you so much. And this is the end of our interview. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Gwen. Thank you.